Welcome back to the studio. You're watching France 24. This is Eye on Africa. Let's take a look at our top stories in this edition. Pleading for a light sentence, the defense team for the Malian Jihadist charged with destroying ancient Islamic structures in Timbuktu asked for leniency on the last day of this historic trial. 20 years in prison for one of Khadija's rapists. The other 6 await their appeal sentence at the end of the month. The young Moroccan woman committed suicide late July when she learned her aggressors had been conditionally released. And getting ready to roam free once again, a sanctuary for orphan bonobos in the Democratic Republic of Congo is releasing 24 of them into the wild. They'll have to hide from their number one enemy, poachers. It's the first ICC trial relating to the 2012 Malian War, and Ahmed al-Faki al-Mahdi is the first Islamist militant to stand before a judge at The Hague. He faces 1 count of destroying ancient Islamic mausoleums in Timbuktu. This Wednesday, closing arguments were presented, with the ICC scheduled to render its verdict on September 27th.
We're here to give justice to memory, to reaffirm the importance of symbols in the existence of a people. We're here to repair the humiliation felt by a people without defense and under occupation, while the symbols of their identity, history, and their religious vision were reduced to dust.
In return for pleading guilty and apologizing, Mahdi's defense team urged leniency, asking International Criminal Court judges to give him between 9 and 11 years behind bars instead of the prosecutor's suggestion of 30. Nicolas Germain has more.
These last 3 days, Malians have been following the trial at the ICC closely. Jihadist al-Mahdi is accused of having razed ancient tombs in Timbuktu in 2012. His apology failed to convince many in the capital Bamako.
These people go abroad to look for men who will come and destroy our monuments, and who act like we don't know our religion, like we've been practicing our religion the wrong way for centuries.
We cannot allow these things to happen in our country. We cannot accept for war to take place and for people to destroy our cultural heritage.
Prosecutors said al-Mahdi headed a group which destroyed 9 tombs on the door of a mosque. Most dated back to the 14th century.
It's a lesson that humanity must recognize, that you should not destroy cultural heritage. That is what happened, and archives and important heritage from old civilizations were lost and have disappeared.
In 2014, Malians began rebuilding the tombs in Timbuktu. And last year, officials from UNESCO and the government inaugurated their work. The mausoleums were shrines to Timbuktu's founding fathers, who had been venerated as saints by most of the city's inhabitants.
The South African rand and bonds lost value after it was revealed the finance minister is being summoned by police. Praveen Gordhan is reported to report to an elite police unit over the existence of a rogue spy unit at the tax collection agency. That spy unit is said to have been set up between 1999 and 2009, when Gordhan was finance minister the first time. Critics say Gordhan is being targeted because he's refused to publicly support President Jacob Zuma's $60 billion nuclear power plant project. Restraining local banks. Nigeria's central bank has banned 9 local banks from trading in foreign exchange. The 9 are accused of withholding $2.1 billion in government funds. More than 10% of Nigeria's GDP comes from oil exports, but with low oil prices around the world and the resulting foreign currency shortages, the naira has plunged to a record low. To put this in context, our guest is Uzodinma Iwala, CEO of Ventures Publishing International. Thank you so much for joining us on France 24. Tell us, why did the Nigerian central bank take this decision?
So this decision is really about compliance with the directive to move money from commercial bank accounts into the central bank's TSA, Treasury Single Account. Now, there are about 9 banks who have not moved a total of $2.21 billion. And it seems like this is a measure to get them to comply and move that money that's actually supposed to be remitted to the Nigerian National Petroleum Company accounts into the central bank.
What are the ramifications that are possible with this decision? What's going to happen now?
Well, so the thing is, it really just increases a lot of uncertainty around foreign exchange practices and foreign exchange policy. What we don't know at this point in time, there are a lot of questions, is whether this is a permanent thing, whether if this money is moved, these banks are going to come off of this restrictions list. We don't know that yet. We also don't know basically what the general exchange rate policy is. This is in keeping with sort of the opacity of what the central bank really wants to do, with different policy changes being made almost overnight. That creates a lot of uncertainty, and it's really bad for a business, I think.
At the end of the day, it seems like the Nigerian central bank is really trying to assert its power, in a sense, over these smaller local banks.
Right. Well, they're not actually that small. Some of the banks on that list are some of Nigeria's largest banks, which is a little bit worrying. But, at the same time, it is a good thing to have a more transparent accounting system for the federal government. That way, you actually can deal with corruption in an opacity and sort of the flow of funds in a meaningful way. But this could actually hurt more than it helps.
All right. Thank you so much for those details. Uzodinma Iwala, CEO of Ventures Publishing International. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24. On the last leg of his African tour, the U.S. Secretary of State met with civil society groups in Nigeria. John Kerry first welcomed a group dedicated to recovering stolen funds. Anti-corruption activists say $6 billion worth of Nigerian money is in illegal offshore accounts and asked Washington for help to get the money back. Kerry then met with a group of young women studying the sciences, urging the importance of girls' education.
Millions of young women not in school, who don't even have the opportunity to go to school. There are many too many young women who are pushed into a forced marriage at a young age. And so we're working very hard on a program that is about women's choice, about women being able to make choices.
Seeking belated justice for Khadija. The 15-year-old Moroccan girl was gang raped by 6 men who left her pregnant. When she learned they had benefited from a conditional release from jail, Khadija committed suicide by setting herself on fire. This Wednesday, an appeals court sentenced one of her rapists to 20 years behind bars. The appeal was brought by human rights groups fighting to end impunity for sexual abuse of minors.
Found innocent and freed 7 months ago, now a group of men find themselves back in court fighting an appeal brought by NGOs. They're accused of the abduction and rape of Khadija, a 15-year-old girl who set herself on fire and died at the end of July.
I find it really shocking she had to commit suicide to force the authorities to make these small changes.
Mais Khadija, ça devient un symbole qui...
Khadija has become a symbol of his problems. As an association for women's rights, we have spent years calling for laws that protect women from all forms of violence.
Des lois qui protègent les femmes de toute forme de violence.
Khadija grew up here, in this arid region more than 100 kilometers from Marrakesh. Shortly before her death, the girl received threats from her attackers that they would post the video of the rape online. Khadija's mother said she watched helpless as her daughter suffered.
I could see that she felt a deep sense of injustice. And even as her mother, I could do nothing. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I suffered like my daughter. She set herself on fire. She's not here anymore. But I continue to suffer. I hope the authorities and the judges help me to get justice for my daughter. She didn't live to see it, but I want her rights given back to her after her death. It's the only thing that will bring me peace. God alone knows how I have been affected by the loss of Khadija.
Khadija's story ends here, in her hometown. Now all her distraught mother has left is the hope that justice for the dead teenager will finally be served.
And now let's take a look at what else is making headlines around the continent. And gunshots and tear gas in Zimbabwe, where riot police fired on youths protesting against police brutality. As the situation calmed, traces of looting could be seen. The demonstration was organized by the main opposition MDCT party's youth wing. As the situation deteriorates over the economy, protests have become a near daily occurrence. Targeting Joseph Konys' sons, the U.S. Treasury Department says it's targeted Salim and Ali Kony for acting for or on behalf of the LRA. Kony, who remains at large, is the leader of the Central African-based Lord's Resistance Army rebel group, and the U.S. slapped sanctions on him in March of this year. The LRA has killed more than 100,000 people and forced tens of thousands of children to become child soldiers. Following Tuesday's general strike that brought Kinshasa to a halt, DRC police have arrested 32 people in the capital and in Mbuji-Mayi in the center of the country. A move criticized by the UN that called some of the arrests arbitrary. 11 of those arrested remain in custody. The opposition coalition Rassemblement are gathering called for the general strike throughout the country to protest against delaying this year's presidential election. Meanwhile, 3 days to go before Gabon's presidential vote. This Wednesday, incumbent President Ali Bongo turned down a proposed two-way debate with his main rival, Jean Ping. Ping had demanded a face-off rather than participate in a political show on public television. Gabon has only had 3 presidents since independence in 1960, and 2 of them were father and son. In an interview with France 24, Ali Bongo maintained he was the best candidate for change.
It's true that I grew up in this political system, which means I know it well. Consequently, I am the best placed to change it. I've seen how it works, and I've had a very frank discussion with my father on what worked and what was less successful. So today, I am the best person to bring about real change, because my ideas have nothing to do with the old system.
We share more than 98% of our genes with them, but bonobos are a favorite target for poachers in Central Africa. The apes live mostly in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a sanctuary welcomes orphan bonobos whose parents have been killed. Thomas Nicolan reports on a very special event at the sanctuary, the day those that are ready are released back into the wild.
Every morning at the sanctuary, feeding the bonobos allows the team to observe them closely. This routine gives clues as to which ones are ready to be released into the wild.
I observe all of them. Who we eat, how they move, who has trouble finding the food we gave, how they eat. When we release them, this is going to help us because now we know which ones are going to be okay on their own and which ones will always be waiting for their meal like they did in the sanctuary.
In December this year, no less than 24 bonobos will be transported to the Congolese equatorial forest. This operation leaves nothing to chance. The bonobos must be carefully chosen. Only the fittest of the fittest will be able to survive out there.
Picking the wrong bonobo can have serious consequences. Bonobos that are too fragile might not be able to make it on their own.
The sanctuary takes care of bonobos that were captured and destined to be sold as pets or simply eaten. As soon as they get here, the younger ones are taken care of by a substitution mother. The sanctuary's conservation efforts are remarkable, but bonobos are still endangered. The bush meat trade has left them vulnerable to hunting, but protecting them is important on many levels.
Saving the bonobos is important because they're our closest relatives, and if we let them go, we'll let everything go. I mean it. Because between them and us, there's only a thin line that separates our worlds. We need to save them.
Experts believe there are only 3 generations of bonobos left in the wild. That means they could be extinct in less than 70 years. And even though there is still hope, we might soon be losing an important member of the animal kingdom.
And that's it for this edition of Eye on Africa. France 24 continues with more news coming up. Do stay with us.